We're going to make our infrastructure modernized, and we're really way behind schedule. We're way behind other countries. We always led the way for many, many years. Then, a number of decades ago, it slowed down. This is a common sense and bipartisan plan that every member of Congress should support.
A word that describes so much of the president's bill, probably about 80% of it, is Trump tolls. The Trump infrastructure plan is like a Hollywood facade. It may look real from afar, but in truth, it's a flat mirage.
Democrats responding in unison to the infrastructure pitch by the president, the administration. Bernie Sanders, senator from Vermont, saying the Trump budget is morally bankrupt, bad economic policy. It pays for his tax breaks for the rich and large corporations by slashing Medicaid by $1.3 trillion, cutting Medicare by $554 billion, and slicing $10 billion from the Social Security Disability Insurance Program. If you look at the budget highlights that came out today, we mentioned the infrastructure, $1.5 trillion, and then national defense, $716 billion, $23 billion on border security, $17 billion on the opioid crisis, but a lot of talk about what it doesn't do and about long-term deficit and debt concerns. Let's bring in our panel. Steve Hayes, editor-in-chief of the Weekly Standard. Molly Hemingway, senior editor at the Federalist, and former Maryland Democratic Congresswoman Donna Edwards. We welcome here. Steve, let me start with you. This rollout, obviously the president's saying this is infrastructure week. He's trying to pitch this. Does it go the full distance?
No, I don't think it does. I mean, we've had infrastructure weeks before. We haven't had much success. Part of that, I think, is the way that the president has chosen to talk about infrastructure in the past. Rather than emphasizing deregulation and getting rid of permits, which the White House is doing more this time, they've talked about it as necessary stimulus, and they've emphasized the spending aspects of that. Well, that's not something that's going to appeal to Republicans in the House of Representatives, and I don't think it ought to appeal to Republicans in the House of Representatives. This is going to be a very tough sell for the president on the infrastructure package alone. I can't imagine it goes anywhere.
Molly.
There's a smart way to do infrastructure, and there's the typical way we do infrastructure. The typical way is that you're just handing out money to corporations. I mean, we saw in the stimulus bill that it was a lot of shovel-ready projects that just went to corporations that were able to spend money, but didn't really do a lot to change the infrastructure. Jim Manzi is a policy analyst who has done good work on how to do a smart infrastructure spending, where he talks about the importance of coming up with projects that help regional or national interests and can enable private wealth generation, as opposed to just being, again, these handouts. So I think we have a lot to learn about this infrastructure bill and how much it goes from the normal way of doing it to this better way of doing it. But in general, this is a budget that just is irresponsible in how it doesn't take our debt and deficit problems seriously, and it's very disappointing to see. The
infrastructure question for Democrats, I think this administration really would like to have Democrats sign on to some of this on the issue of infrastructure. Listening to Chuck Schumer and others today, it doesn't seem like they're that close, are they?
Well, I think there's a real reason for that. And typically, infrastructure up until recent years has actually been quite bipartisan. Here's the problem with the president's proposal. One, we have an infrastructure deficit of about $4.5 trillion. This is $1.5 trillion. It privatizes a lot of what should be public infrastructure, whether it's on transit or on highways and roads. And of course, we know that it has to be paid for so it can pay us back. And the reality is that with all of the talk of the investment in infrastructure, $1.5 trillion is actually about the same amount as that tax bill. It would have been actually better spent on infrastructure. I'm not just sure where it's going to come from, and we shouldn't be privatizing our infrastructure.
Do you think that Democrats have found a new love of talking about deficits and debt that perhaps was not there in recent years, that there's more of a concern because you have this Republican administration that seems to want to be spending?
No, the question is what you're spending on. And so, for example, if we were spending $1.5 trillion on infrastructure, on our highways, our bridges, our roads, to clear up the deficit that we have on spending infrastructure, that actually pays the economy back because it doubles up on the number of jobs that you create and in terms of making our economy actually much more productive and efficient. And so for me, it's a question of spending it in the right kind of way if you want it to pay back.
But you're not, just to be clear, you're not spending the tax dollars by giving people their money back. The people are the ones who earn the money in the first place. You're allowing them to retain more of the money that they've already earned, or in the cases of these businesses that are helping to grow the U.S. economy, allowing them to provide some, estimates vary, some of that money back to their workers to reinvest others of it, to take others of it in profit. But that's money that the private sector is generating in the first place. The government doesn't have a first right to that money.
Well, that may have been true if 80% of the tax cuts hadn't actually gone to only 1% of the population. And
how much
giving
does that
giving
1%
somebody
how much does that 1% pay
giving
as a
someone
percentage?
$1,000 bonus does not make up for the $1 or $2 that they should have increased in their salaries. And, you know, we're talking infrastructure here. You know, it's really clear the nation's infrastructure is actually, you know, falling apart. Our roads, our bridges, all of it. And so if Republicans are really serious about talking about infrastructure, we have to do things like think about how we pay for it. What about the gas tax that hasn't been increased in, you know, 25 odd years? What about, you know, making sure that we, you know, invest in our transit systems, which are falling apart and aren't even keeping pace with the rest of the world?
Yeah. Molly, I think that the thought process is that on the tax cuts is that the growth will really kick into gear here. And we're already starting to see some of that with some of these companies reinvesting. But on the infrastructure, if he wants to get this done, how does he get to the finish line, considering the Democrat pushback, considering the pushback from his own party on deficits and debt?
I hope that there's pushback from his own party on some of these issues. I worry that there won't be pushback. And the thing is about this, that, you know, increased spending is a tax increase, eventually at least. The best way to give people more of their money back is to cut spending, not increase spending. And we're just seeing a lot of irresponsibility here. I get the feeling, though, that Republicans just don't feel like this is a battle they care about right now. You see, you know, you point out the hypocrisy of Democrats suddenly caring about deficits. Well, Republicans long claimed they cared about these things, and now they actually have the levers of power, and they're not doing anything that demonstrates that they actually do.
To your point, President Trump, then candidate Trump, and Speaker Ryan before.
We owe $18 trillion. We're going to $21 trillion and ultimately 24, which is a magic word. You know, $24 trillion, that's the magic number. That's like the point of no return. And we're there very quickly. We're going to end up being another Greece, and maybe we're going to end up being another Detroit, because that's where our country is going. We need proper leadership.
We have got to stop spending money we just don't have. We got to cut spending. We got to get this budget deficit under control and get this debt under control.
So, Steve, is the Republican Party changing, or is this a moment in time that they're trying to get something done in a bipartisan way to then fix it in their mind later?
I think the Republican Party is changing. I mean, look, President Trump ran for office not talking about debt and deficits in the way that Republicans had in the past. Now, you can be cynical and say that they didn't mean it in the past either. But he didn't make it a priority, and he argued against. He argued against Medicaid reform, Medicare reform. He argued against touching Social Security. This has been something the Republicans included in their budgets from 2011 to 2016. And this president, for the first time since 1976, didn't mention the national debt in his State of the Union address. That suggests to me it's a problem. It was in there in one of the longer versions of it. It was later taken out. But if you're not talking about it and you're the President of the United States, you don't care about it that much.